Hey there, CS320 students. So in this recording, we're going to continue the testing tutorial where we perform test-driven development to implement the school class. Remember, we started out, it has an ID attribute, but it also has a name attribute. So we want to perform test-driven development to get the name attribute included here as well. So again, I know that this is a simple data encapsulation class. We could just come in here and put the name attribute, but we want to perform test-driven development where we create our test cases and then we implement just enough functionality to make that test case pass, and then we are always ensuring that our test, each line of code, is actually needed. So let's continue on. So we've tested the ID. We're going to have some similar things with the name attribute. So let's go ahead and come down here and let's test the name. So we could just copy and paste this test right here. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. And so we're going to change ID to be test name. And so it has to have a minimum length. Oops, I got a typo in that, so let's make that H. So again, the name of the school has to be at least 1. So we'll call this valid name, valid name. And so this is valid name as well. So, oops, I need to have that valid ID attribute. I'm sorry. We need to include a valid name, right? Because we need to pass in that name attribute as well. So first thing it's going to do is complain about the fact that we do not have a second parameter to our constructor. So let's go ahead and add that to it. So change the constructor, add that parameter. And so this is going to be the name. And so just like the ID attribute, let's use a setter for it. So set name, and we'll pass in name, create that method. And this one, we're actually going to create this as public. So in your assignment for the implementation, you can change the name and some of the other attributes. The only attribute you cannot change is the ID, so we're going to make that a private function. All right, so then we're going to go this dot name equals name. All right, and so we'll add that attribute. And so that created it for us right there. So now we come back here and we want to ensure that we get the name. And so we're going to check valid name. Oh, I don't need to pass in the string literal. We can pass in the variable here. And next thing it complains about is it doesn't have a getName method. So let's go create that. So instead of object, that is a string, and we would return the name. Oh, by the way, if you recall from the Java skills, we could use Lombok for this. So we could use an @getter annotation. We can delete out these getters. We're going to import. Oops, we need to add the getter. So we would need to go download the Lombok jar. So we've done that previously, but just to refresh your memory, download Lombok. So download the jar file, and then just like I did in the school tutorial, I copied it to the project. So let's go copy that to the project. I thought I clicked the download button. I must not have. Download. And I'm going to copy this jar, and I'm going to paste it to my project. Oops, right click, paste. I think I lost it. Yep. Right click, copy. Right click, paste. And so now I'm going to add it to the build path. I could probably just right click and add to the build path right there. Yes, I can. Great, and now it should see this getter. Fantastic. Now I have my getter right there. And I can always check by looking at the outline right there. See, it's providing the ID and name getters right there. Okay, so now that we got that all cleaned up, I need to save all. So great, this is seeing that I've got a constructor with an ID and a name, and oh, guess what? We just broke all of our tests up here. So how do we fix these tests? Well, really, we should make these constants right here global. And so we'll get rid of that. And so now I can reference those constants. And remember, these tests, the purpose of them was to test the ID attribute, so we would pass a valid name to those. And same thing here, I have to pass it a valid name there. Okay, so we've got all of our code syntax free and compiling, so let's come down here. So we should be able to test that we get a name, and it's a valid name, and it is valid. So right-click, run as, JUnit, and fantastic, we have passed all of our tests. Just like above, we tested for a null value, so we can go ahead and basically do the exact same thing down here. I'm just going to copy this test, and we're going to test name with null value throws illegal argument, so that's got to be null. Now, keep in mind, we want this ID attribute to not throw an exception, so this needs to be our valid ID. All right, right-click, run as. So we have our failing test. That means we get to go write implementation code. So let's go to the constructor. So we call the setter right there, and in this setter, we do not check for the null value. So let's go do that. If name equals null, throw new illegal argument exception, name cannot be null. Otherwise, we don't throw an exception and we set that name. Great. Let's go see if this test passes. Right-click, run as, JUnit, and fantastic, we are passing all of our tests. Okay, so we would do the very similar ideas as before. We would need to test if there are 10 characters resulting in successful results. We should test if the string, I should say the name, is empty, resulting in illegal argument exception. Let's see here. What else do we have here? Let's see here. So we would need to check if there are more than 10 characters. Should test if the name exceeds maximum character limit, resulting in illegal argument exception. Okay, great. Now, oh, by the way, what are we really testing here when we create this, when we test this? We're really testing the constructor. So if I come back here, we're actually testing this constructor, and then we're testing the set name. Ideally, we want this to only test one thing. So let's come back here, and we could also test this by calling the setName function. Okay, so keep in mind, in your project implementation, you're actually able to edit your objects, so you could use setters to perform that action. So let's come in here, and we're going to actually create our test school. And it needs to be valid to start with. So we create a valid school. And then we're going to go my test school. Remember, we have a setter, so we can call that set name. And so let's take our valid name. Do we have one with max length? No, we don't. So let's create one up here. Final string valid name max length. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. So let's see if we got 10 characters there. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's our valid string. And so really, and these should all be private, by the way, too. Even though it's test code, we should always follow standards are expected in industry. And so here we go. So valid name. Remember, this needs to be invalid, so let's add an additional character to it. And so this should throw an exception. So assertions dot assert throws illegal argument exception. And we pass it the lambda and my test school dot set name. So this will not throw the illegal argument exception, so it fits our test-driven development policy that we have to, oops, what do I have? I'm missing a parenthesis. There we go. Oops, there we go. Now I can right-click Run as JUnit, and so I can see that it did not throw the exception. Okay, nothing was thrown. So now we can go inside and else if name.length exceeds 10, then we throw new illegal argument exception. Name cannot exceed 10 characters. All right, fantastic. So we've got our handler. So now let's save all and run this test. And what did it not do? Set name, valid name. Oh, I needed to call valid name max length, right? Yep, I want this one. How about we do this one? And really, that could be valid name max length right there too as well. It doesn't really matter here. This is going to pass. This is going to fail. Right click, run as JUnit, and great. So when we add this additional character to the name, this actually fails. So this is a really nice way to handle this, where if we want to change the condition for a valid name, we only have to change it one place. And then if we want to make it invalid, we just simply add one additional character to it, like you see here. Okay, so now we've got some pretty robust testing. We should really only be testing the set name method in this particular method down here. Really what we're doing, we're testing in the constructor. So right here, we create our object. Really, this is testing, did we create the object? But that's going to be okay for now. And let's just take one last look. Did we cover everything? Announcements. So we are handling the maximum character limit. There's no minimum character limit. If there is none, nope, that's not the case. So I think we've covered all of our bases. We have the min length, valid ID. Oh, we should probably have one for max length, right? And yep, we've got that right here. If the name is empty, yep, we've got that case. You would need to implement that. And we just implemented the We just implemented the max name length. So this is not named right. This should be with invalid value max exceeds max length. We want to get as specific as possible with our conditions. Okay, so that's going to do it for the data encapsulation classes. As always, reach out if you have questions.